Let's talk about Judge Andrew Napolitano for a second. I'm not a big fan of former Judge Andrew Napolitano. He's a Fox News contributor type. He wrote a pretty good piece, though, and I want to talk about it. He wrote a piece on Reason.com about the debate over trying domestic terrorists in a different way than so-called regular criminals in the U.S. by effectively abandoning due process. Of course, due process generally defined as fair treatment through the normal judicial system, especially as a citizen's entitlement. And I'll put up the first of two quotes I want to discuss from Andrew Napolitano's Reason.com article. Quote, "It should come as no surprise that no sooner had the suspect in the recent New Jersey and New York City bombings been arrested than public calls came to strip him of his rights, send him to Gitmo, and extract information from him. This is more Vladimir Putin than James Madison." And in his article on Reason.com, Andrew Napolitano goes on to say more about this, and I'll show you quote number 2. "I have often argued that it is in times of fear, whether generated by outside forces or by the government itself, when we need to be most vigilant about protecting our liberties. I make this argument because when people are afraid, it is human nature for them to accept curtailment of their liberties, whether it be speech or travel or privacy or due process, if they become convinced that the curtailment will keep them safe. But these liberties are natural rights, integral to all rational people and not subject to the government's whim. Either we change these rules for everyone or we don't, and I would argue that changing them is dangerous. The entire point of due process is that we have basic ground rules that are not up for interpretation depending on what the crime is that someone is suspected of, because that subjectivity is very, very dangerous. This is actually all related to a sort of perversion or distortion of how this idea of we should treat terrorists differently even sprung up. The idea that terrorists could be held without due process comes from thinking, well, we're going to be overseas and we're going to capture people in what we would colloquially describe as combat situations. Domestic terrorists were never supposed to be handled in that way. We have a criminal justice system that is perfectly well equipped to deal with terrorists. Many of them have been charged, convicted, and put away. What are we saying when we say, well, certain people or certain crimes here in the U.S. can be arbitrarily excluded from the constitutionally granted criminal justice system because what? It'll be a deterrent to future terrorists. Who really believes that? And this is not just a theoretical discussion. Whether or not he can achieve it, Donald Trump has made it very clear, to the extent that he even understands this issue, he will try to remove many constitutional protections. When Trump talks about trying U.S. terror suspects in military tribunals, when he uses coded language about toughening libel laws against media, when he talks about religion-based bans on people coming to the U.S., he's really getting at the heart of the American Constitution. And to be clear, I'm not excluding Hillary Clinton from any of this. There are concerns with Hillary Clinton as well. But there is no doubt that would-be hypothetical President Donald Trump would go way further. And I haven't even dealt with executive actions that he might pass. So this has real-world implications. And I actually do agree with former Judge Andrew Napolitano on this. GameFly is sort of like Netflix for video games. They have over 8,000 new and classic games for Xbox One, Xbox 360, PS4, PS3, Wii, and a bunch of other platforms. And you can play as many games as you want for one monthly fee. And if you find some games you want to keep, you can buy them for a low used price. There's never any due dates or late fees. And our audience can get a free 30-day trial at gameflyoffer.com/TDPS. The games are shipped directly to you with return envelopes included. There's no contracts, and you can rent games through the mobile app. Get the free 30-day trial for the David Pakman Show audience and support our show by going to gameflyoffer.com/TDPS.